Hi, Charles is the Book Sage here, and this is episode 6 of my Harry Potter series First Time Reread. And today I am going over chapters 6 through 9 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. If this is your first time here, I am a booktuber. I cover mostly science fiction and fantasy, though not exclusively that. And I have a year-long Harry Potter series that I publish every Monday. And so if that's something you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button. And now let's begin. Chapter 6 is Gilderoy Lockhart. And we left off with Harry and Ron arriving in the flying car and the Whomping Willow and all that stuff. And we start off at breakfast the next morning, and Ron receives a howler. Now, I actually love the howler. I think it's an ingenious idea of Rowling's. It's really cool how it just pops up, humiliates the heck out of Ron and Harry a little bit. And what I like here is Hermione, who's been kind of stiff and standoffish with them because of how they arrived. She's back to normal now because to her the howler she's satisfied that's enough of a punishment for them, for their stupidity. And then they're off to herbology we meet Professor Sprout, who is arriving with Gilderoy Lockhart, now I get such enjoyment from Gilderoy Lockhart in this book. I mean, Kenneth Branagh does just a wonderful job playing him in the movie, but I really, really enjoy the character in the book here. He's so full of himself and such a fraud and such a hack, but he's always immaculately dressed. His hair is perfect. He's gracious with his clothes and the way he speaks, and he has this amazing ability to undermine everybody but make it sound like he's being generous just by even giving them any attention. And the first thing he does here is he undermines Professor Sprout in front of all of our second year students, but he does it again with such a gracious smile, and there's the juxtaposition between him and Sprout because he's just perfectly groomed and she's got a patched hat and her dirt all under her fingernails because she spends all day digging in dirt with these herbs and all sorts of things. And he has to, of course, pull Harry aside for a private conversation to congratulate him on what he sees as Harry's fame-seeking with his car stunt, but kind of admonishing Harry, slow down a little bit in your fame there. You have a long way to go before you reach someone who, my heights. And I get the kind of sense that there's a little tinge of jealousy and worry on Lockhart that Harry is stealing some of his thunder. And but in herbology, we get back to this is one of the things Rowling's really good at here in writing the series. We see the mandrakes. We're introduced to the mandrake, and that it's a powerful restorative against curses and other things, which of course will play a key role in this book later on. And this is what Rowling's really good at, setting up the book, setting up the plot, foreshadowing. I saw a lot of that in the first book throughout as the chapters went along, where she kept layering in things. And we also, after this, is Transfiguration, and we start to see the problems with Ron's broken wand, with I think it's spello tape or whatever it is, trying to keep it together. And of course, he won't ask his mom for a new wand because she's already humiliated him with a howler, and he just thinks he'll get another howler and more. Or they might even bring him home just to punish him. But the broken wand and how things sort of go haywire and backfire is, again, another great little setup for what we're going to get in the book. And we also get in this chapter one of my favorite supporting characters, little Colin Creevey, the little new first-year Gryffindor student who's just idolizes Harry as the best person who's ever walked the face of the earth, and he's just desperate to get a picture of him and talk to him and say hello to him every day. And they're outside, and he wants Ron to take a picture of Harry and him together and have Harry autograph it. And of course, Draco hears this, and Draco is Draco. He starts mocking them and making fun of them, and loud enough for everyone to gather around. And Draco does what he's raised to do: find people's weaknesses and exploit them, which is what he does here. He's trying to goad Ron and Harry and them into attacking him, getting in trouble, getting detention, getting expelled, the whole works. But Gilderoy Lockhart intervenes because he hears, what's this? Harry's autographing pictures? And then, of course, he comes and poses with Harry himself for Colin because Gilderoy can't handle any other fame seeker, even though Harry's the opposite of a fame seeker. Gilderoy just sees and hears and just assumes Harry's kind of a challenge to him and his role as the most famous wizard. And then, of course, he takes Harry aside and brings him, like, forcibly with him all the way to the Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Again, talking to him about it, letting him know he's got a long, long way to go before he can reach Lockhart's status. But he admires Harry's interest in fame, even though, of course, Harry has no interest at all. And Lockhart here, again, we're now in the classroom. It's his first day as Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, and Lockhart just cracks me up. Very first thing is, here's a test to see if you all read all my books. 54 questions, all about Gilderoy Lockhart. And Hermione, of course, is the only one who answers them all. And then when he sees them kind of making fun of him a little bit, he shows them the Cornish pixies and unleashes them, and they just wreck the whole place. They tear the room apart, smash the windows, steal Lockhart's wand and throw it out the window. All the kids run out, and then Lockhart basically tells Harry, Ron, and Hermione, you take care of them for me, and closes the door, leaving them in there. And this is where we learn a couple of things here, that Lockhart might actually be a fraud, and all these things he claims he's done, he might have made up. And with Hermione defending him when Ron mentions this, that, this guy's a fraud, pretty much, Hermione defends him, and you've noticed earlier in the book when we met him in Diagon Alley, the women all seem enamored of him. And you begin to suspect, does he have some sort of potion or spell that is effective on women to make them all, idolize him? And it's even impacting Hermione. And it's interesting to see here. But again, it's laying that groundwork that, Gilderoy is not what he seems. And it's really interesting if you look at the whole grand scheme of things with Dumbledore, because obviously Dumbledore approved him. There's a Hagrid, I think in the next chapter, mentions that nobody else even wanted the job because they believe it's all cursed at this point. And Gilderoy was the only one who leapt at it. But it's interesting the pieces Dumbledore will put into place and the people Dumbledore will use. Even someone as absolutely absurd as Lockhart serves a purpose, being in the right place at the right time. So now, Chapter 7. We have Mudbloods and Murmurs. And it's been a disastrous week for Harry. He's hated every moment of Colin Creevey sort of idolizing him, of Lockhart just finding every moment to just have his attention and aggrandize himself, and how basically in his nice smarmy way how superior he is to Harry. I love Colin's eagerness and innocent adoration of Harry. He's just an endearing character because he means well, and even though he can come across to Harry as a pain in the ass. But it's finally the weekend. It's time for Quidditch practice. Normally a fun thing for Harry. And Wood, obsessed with winning this year, just tortures them with hours and hours of new plays on boards for them to kind of learn before they even get out to the practice field. And when they do finally get out there, one quick note before that, Colin is tagging along with Harry and asking him about Quidditch. So Harry explains the basic concept and construct of Quidditch to Colin, which is a slick way for Rowling to reintroduce Quidditch to the reader as a reminder, and perhaps to the reader who hasn't read the first book, so they get an idea of what Quidditch is. But anyway, so they finally get to the practice field, and here come the Slytherin team. They've got permission slip from Snape overruling Wood having booked the field that morning. And of course, they unveil their new seeker, Draco, and how that Draco has bought the entire Slytherin team, the new Nimbus 2001 broomsticks. And I like this because here we have the rivalry of Harry and Draco go up a whole nother level. Because now Draco is going to be facing off directly against Harry. And, of course, Hermione points out that at least no one on the Gryffindor team had to buy their way in. And here we have a really important moment when Draco calls Hermione a filthy mudblood. And even though we don't know what that is, the shock on everyone's face from it and the reaction and just chaos breaks out as all the Gryffindors try to go after Draco. And then Ron, his spell backfiring and hitting himself, and then he just starts puking the slugs for the rest of the chapter. But this is another indication, and we saw some of this in the beginning chapters when we learn of Dobby and house elves and the different hierarchies of wizarding families. We learn in this chapter here about that sort of dark underside and archaic hangovers from the wizarding world that are now starting to reemerge as Voldemort's beginning to start to reemerge himself. And they go to Hagrid's to see if Hagrid can help them with Ron, and where they learn more about mudbloods and half-bloods and purebloods and all that whole stuff. And we get a great little reminder here of Hagrid's past. We're reminded that because Harry notices when Hagrid's showing them his pumpkins that are just huge, and they realize Hagrid's using magic to make his pumpkins grow more. Harry sees the pink umbrella and is reminded that he thinks Hagrid's wand is hidden in the umbrella because Hagrid isn't allowed to use magic. He was expelled, I think, in his 3rd year in Hogwarts a while back. And the reason he's been expelled is a mystery, and Hagrid won't talk about it. So it's a great reminder here for this book, again, more plot building, foreshadowing, to bring us back to the fact that Hagrid used to be a student and was expelled over something mysterious and bad, which again is just stuff how Rowling's really, really good at here in writing this story. She set some of those things up in the first book, and she's bringing them back into the second book at just the right moments to begin just working it in. And she does it in nice little casual ways that you may not notice your first read through. It's just, interesting information the first time around. But now here I see the building blocks specifically put in for this story. And it's a great setup for the plot to come. And then, of course, Harry gets his detention for what happened on the Quidditch field. And this scene here was really, really interesting to me. And now that I've read it here the second time. And he has to spend it with Gilderoy Lockhart. And he spends hours, apparently 4 hours, filling out envelopes, writing and writing and writing, and his hands all cramped. And even though it's not meant to be, I couldn't help but thinking about Harry's detention much later in the series from Umbridge. And that kind of harrowing experience that one is compared to this. And I just like that. Again, this is something I only get in a reread, not a first-time read, because I don't know that Umbridge is coming the first time around. But I just liked that sort of moment of giving me a reminder and seeing how much changes in this story later. But the most important part here is later in this chapter when he's in detention in the office with Lockhart, and we finally start to get into the main meat of the story. And that's when Harry hears, and it's described as a breathtaking, ice-cold venom, a venomous voice. And it's saying, come to me, let me rip you, let me tear you, let me kill you. And Lockhart doesn't seem to hear it. And Lockhart's simply been droning on about how wonderful he is and all the photos, the paintings of Lockhart all around agreeing. And then Lockhart, after telling Harry he mustn't expect a treat like this every time he gets detention to spend it with him, he sends Harry along his way back to Gryffindor Tower. And that's pretty much how Mudbloods and Murmurs ends. And again, found a lot of historical information in this chapter with the whole mudblood, pureblood, half-blood hierarchy. A reminder of Hagrid having been involved in something in the school that got himself expelled. And then now Harry's starting to hear voices. And now we move into Chapter 8, The Deathday Party, where it's October now. We're coming up to Halloween. Everyone's gotten a cold, so many students, but Madame Pomfrey's pepper up potion is kind of an instant cure. The only side effect is it like blows steam out of your ears for like a couple of hours. And we have a reference to Ginny looking really pale and Percy forcing her to drink this potion. And it's a nice little tidbit bringing Ginny back. And Hagrid had mentioned that Ginny had been coming by earlier to his little cottage as well in the previous chapter. I forgot to mention that. So we're getting little like reminders of Ginny's there, and here she's kind of pale, so there's something off with Ginny. But it's just a quick little mention. Again, more building in, plot building, foreshadowing. And returning from a late Quidditch practice, Harry stops for a chat with nearly headless Nick, who's all upset and angry that the headless hunt has rejected him yet again because he's got like a little half-inch of skin that keeps his head hanging on. And he just can't deal with the fact that he's not fully headless and can't be a member of the headless hunt. And what happens here is Mrs. Norris comes along, sees Harry. Harry's covered in mud, traipsing mud. And we get a little interesting bit with Filch here, and Filch pops up. He's all mad at him. He takes Harry down to his office. And Filch tells him, it's like, you're traipsing mud through the place. This is hours of work for me. And none of you kids ever even get that. Of all the things you do here, all your messes that I've got to follow up and clean up after you. I spend hours and hours and hours of my day. I'm basically cleaning up after all you kids, and you never notice and you never care. Even though he doesn't say all of that, you can take that meaning from it and why he's part of why he's so angry. And then there's a huge crash up above, and Peeves has done something, and Filch rushes out to go after him. And then Harry sees the course from Quickspell, and he's wondering, why is Filch looking into learning magic? Isn't Filch a wizard? Doesn't Filch have magic? And then Filch returns, mentions the vanishing cabinet. And even though I think this one's destroyed, another great plot point, great foreshadowing and setup for really important events that happen in the last couple of books in the series. But Filch realizes Harry's seen the Quickspell correspondence and lets Harry go. Basically not admitting what it's for, and Harry not admitting he read it, but both of them kind of knowing. And him letting Harry go with the unspoken promise that Harry won't tell anybody about it. And then on his way back, we learn nearly headless Nick had goaded Peeves into smashing the vanishing cabinet to distract Filch, to get Harry out of trouble, which Harry thanks him for. And then, of course, Nick invites Harry to his Deathday Party, which is Halloween, where it's his 500th death day, and all these ghosts from all over England are going to be there, and all over Britain are going to be there. And of course, the main guy who runs the Headless Hunt is going to be there, and Harry wants Harry to talk up a good talk for him. And Harry ends up agreeing, and then we get the Deathday Party, where we meet all these other ghosts, and of course, most importantly, we get to meet Moaning Myrtle for the first time. I don't remember this even being in the movie. I think out of the 7 films, this is probably the one I've seen the least, even though I really enjoy the movie. Because unless I'm doing a full marathon of all 7 films, I'll often start a rewatch from Prisoner of Azkaban, and I'll do 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Because I've seen the first 2 so many times, but quite a while ago. But I don't even remember if there was this party scene. I don't remember there being a whole party scene, unless it was just sort of in the background. So if you recall whether this is even in the movie or not, just you can hit me up in the comments down below. But we learned that Myrtle haunts a toilet in the girls' bathroom that no one uses because Moaning Myrtle is always in there. And I thought at first that this might have been the same bathroom that they saved Hermione from the troll, but I don't recall. I don't think it is, because why wouldn't we have seen the out of order signs and seen Moaning Myrtle and everything then? But it's cool. Again, we get Moaning Myrtle. I like a lot. You know, we see her here a bit in this book, and then of course in book 4 she comes back in and plays a role. I get a kick out of her, and the actress in the movie. She did such a wonderful job with Moaning Myrtle. And but Harry, they slip out of the party finally, and Harry hears the voice again, talking about rip and tear and kill, and off he goes racing around. He hears it coming up and wondering why he can't see whoever's speaking and how they can be going up through the stone floors and everything. And he's racing up to the second floor, trying to find them. He tells Ron and Hermione that what he hears, and then they discover the Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air beware, with written in blood, and Mrs. Norris hanging upside down next to it. And of course, before they could leave, the whole Halloween party of all the students ends, and everyone comes out, sees them standing there, and Draco, of course, starts mouthing off and super excited about the heir Slytherin. And that's where the chapter ends. And now, like, things are starting to move. The main plot is now in play. Which brings us to chapter 9, the writing on the wall. And here we have an interesting thing. Everyone's arrived. They're looking at Harry and them and wondering if they had something to do with it. And Dumbledore takes Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and Filch, Snape, McGonagall, and Lockhart go to Lockhart's office, and Dumbledore brings the frozen Mrs. Norris there. And they're looking at him, and Dumbledore realizes the cat isn't dead, but petrified. She's been spelled. And we also learn that Filch is a squib. And then a new term I don't think we've heard before up to this point. And I think later in this chapter we learn that a squib is someone born into a magical family who doesn't have magic, kind of the opposite of a muggle. And now you can see part of why Filch is so angry and so resentful of all these kids, because they're getting to have the life that was denied him by not being a wizard. And that's got to be a pretty hard thing to handle. And I think it's at the heart of what makes Filch so miserable. And yet there he is working at the school in a place that just compounds his misery. So he's like, as miserable as it makes him, he can't help but be part of that world because it's what he was born into, even though he can't participate in the way he wants. And for me, it's a real humanizing moment for Filch, because he is kind of a caricature, that like the crusty sort of caretaker that you hate and fear. But this turns Filch into a real person, a real human being, and you really see like the pain that he carries around, and perhaps humiliation and all those things for the not having been born with wizarding powers he should have. And what's interesting here is Snape realizes there's something missing from Harry's explanation of how they ended up where they were on the second floor to discover the writing on the wall and Mrs. Norris. Because Snape's smart, and he knows Harry's hiding something and holding something back. And Dumbledore, you can see, realizes it as well, that Harry's not telling them the whole truth. And in the days that follow, Ginny is particularly upset about what happened, which is interesting because, she seems even more upset than you would normally expect. It's just the general unsettlement from the students. And Hermione, of course, this is a mystery to be solved. What is the chamber? What's the Chamber of Secrets? And she's just thrown herself into studying, trying to figure out what it is. And in the History of Magic class, their only teacher who's a ghost, Professor Binns, Hermione kind of convinces to tell them about the Chamber of Secrets, which is supposedly a secret chamber built by Salazar Slytherin that only he knew about, that could only be opened by his true heir, and it contains a monster that would rise up and purge the school of all the non-purebloods, everyone who doesn't belong there. Which again brings us back to that whole Mudblood thing with Draco and that sort of nasty underbelly that part of the wizarding world looks with a built-in prejudice. And the three of them, after this, return to the scene of the crime, if you will, with the writing on the wall that no one can manage to scrub off, not even with a spell. And Hermione sees the spiders, and we learn of Ron's fear of them, which is, again, a great foreshadowing and setup for much later in the book. And Harry remembers all the water on the floor. And so they go into the bathroom, which, of course, is Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. And, well, though we don't know it yet, we're being introduced to the room, which is critical to the mystery and the whole finale of the book. And again, great for her to set up Moaning Myrtle in the chapter before this, and then bring us to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom to, again, put all these pieces in place for what's to come in the finale of this book. Really, really well done. And of course, like they did in the first book, the kids just start assuming, Snape was the villain, Snape was the bad guy. Now they just automatically latch on, it's got to be Draco. Draco has to be the heir to Slytherin. Who else could it be but Draco? They're one of the oldest Slytherin houses. They've always been Slytherin. It could easily be seeable that they're related to Salazar Slytherin himself. So Hermione, of all people, concocts a plan for them to disguise themselves as members of Slytherin and sneak into the Slytherin common room and basically just start talking to Malfoy, Draco, and get him to admit that he's the heir. And she knows they have a polyjuice potion that could help them look like other people. And then the chapter ends with them pondering how they're going to get their hands on this recipe, because it's got to be in the restricted section. And no teacher is going to believe that they just for the heck of it, want to learn about something. They're going to suspect they're going to use it. And that's pretty much how this chapter ends. Now, this is a nice bridge section to finish off the first half of the book. They're at school. We get Gilderoy. We're starting to see Gilderoy's kind of an idiot. We've got this mystery of Harry starting to hear voices. We have the heir of Slytherin, and they think it's Draco, but most of the school is starting to think that it's Harry, because Harry's the one who found it, so they suspect that Harry's the one who did it. And again, nice chapters here. Great setup. A lot of it's just layering in plots, points, and foreshadowing for the second half of the book. And I'm looking forward to the next part of the book. We have next week I'm doing 4 more chapters. It's going to be chapters 10 through 13, the Rogue Bludger, the Dueling Club, the Polyjuice Potion, and the Very Secret Diary, where we're going to really start to get into the meat and heart of the story now. This will be the first half of the second part of the book that will bring us up to the final act. And I like these chapters. In some ways, they're less action-packed than the first 5 chapters of this book, because this is all set up here, even though you don't really notice again the first time around. But this is really all set up for the whole second half of the book and the what's going to start playing out. With the voices, the heir of Slytherin, the Chamber of Secrets, the pool, the puddles of water, and what part they play in these attacks. The spiders, Ron's wand backfiring, so many different things. It's all done, and very smartly done by Rowling. We get Gilderoy and his absurdness. We get the whole Mudblood and hierarchy of purebloods. We get the Deathday Party, which is all the fun of the ghost, introducing Moaning Myrtle. And then the main mystery kicks in. So really nicely done by J.K. Rowling here. And I am looking forward to the next 4 chapters next week. And that's pretty much it. It's a shorter recap of mine, because again, it's mostly setup and less action happening. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Again, next week, chapters 10 through 13 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I love to hear your comments down below of what you thought of this book overall, and what you thought particularly of chapters 6 through 10 of arriving at school, having their defense against the dark arts, all the way through the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets even existing at the beginning here. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it and what you thought of this book. I'm really enjoying this book a lot. Again, I enjoyed the first book a ton, but this book is, you can see Rowling's writing has improved and gotten slicker and smarter and more focused here. And I'm really enjoying it. But I'm especially looking forward to next week, because now we get into the second half of the book and the action starts to pick up more. And I'm going to wrap it up. That's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm Charles, this is SirBookSage. Happy reading.